So non-duality seems to get mixed with a lot of psychology nowadays. And I've started doing it as well, particularly the last couple of years. Because often I find when people come to me, they don't have non-duality questions. They want me to help fix their suffering in their day-to-day living. And actually non-duality isn't about that. It's different from other spiritualities that are about change your thought processes or improve your life or have a better outlook on life. I really appreciate all that stuff. I did a lot of that work, but it's actually different. Non-duality isn't talking about the person and improving the person's life. Non-duality is pointing to a freedom that's beyond the person. It's an energetic movement from being a person moving in time to nothing experiencing itself as everything, to not a thing experiencing itself as everything. And that sounds really odd. I mean, what does that mean? You have to kind of resonate with what I'm saying rather than try to understand it, because you can't understand it. But right now, there is nobody looking at me. There is nobody looking out of these bodies. There is an emptiness experiencing itself as form. Identification sucks in energy into the person and makes it feel like the person is who you are and the person is experiencing life. And this really creates suffering. Because there's such intense energy in being something that you're not, a limitation. And waking up is actually collapsing back into that void. And there's no longer somebody experiencing it. It's still looking through a human, and the human still has its behaviors and its ways of being, and it still behaves like a human, but that human in which other people might see isn't the experiencer anymore. Sorry, I'm just changing my sound. I realise I'm blowing your heads off with my voice. There we go. I can see the voice monitor on the side and it keeps going red. Red is bad. Not sure why I'm blowing your heads off. I'm doing the same as I always do, but my voice must be bigger today. So anyway, I can still see that I'm blowing your heads off. Okay. Let me turn it down a bit more. I have a very big voice today. There we go. That should be better. Now you're like, it's too quiet, Lisa. So right now, there is nobody looking at me. It's a mental construct which has become an energetic feeling that somebody is looking at you, that somebody is looking out, that somebody's having an experience. There is nobody having an experience now. Who is it that's looking out of the eyes? It's not the person. You are not something moving in time. There's been so much belief in this, that I'm someone moving in time, that I am my actions, I am my thoughts. That's not who you are. Right now, is that person looking out of the eyes? The mind says yes, but what's the actual experience? Is that person looking out? Is that person experiencing? And notice that that person is actually being experienced. It's not experiencing. Come on then. What a good girl. And this emptiness that's experiencing itself as form now never leaves. What leaves, what comes and goes, is everything about you. Your body comes and goes, your thoughts come and go, your ideas come and go, your feelings come and go. But this experiencing never comes and goes. So traditionally what they say in Advaita, and I quite like this, but eventually these two compress together and it is everywhere, is that there is this consciousness, this perception, that is the first thing that comes into existence. So first of all, there's nothing, then consciousness comes into existence, and then the body comes into existence, and I am comes into existence. And the I am and the consciousness are always there and present. And they are not a thing, but they are all things. All things appear in that consciousness and I am. And the I am is love, total and utter love. And the consciousness is emptiness. It holds on to nothing. It's totally free of everything. And eventually these two stop being separated out. I'm only separating it out because minds work like that. And it's easier for the mind to hear this. But ultimately, I'm not talking to the mind. I can't talk to the mind. But it's easier for the mind to digest this information. So you got the consciousness, the I am, that's looking through this body, and everything that is looked at is that consciousness and I am. The consciousness is the freedom in the sense that everything is accepted. There is nothing that's rejected by consciousness, because consciousness is totally and utterly empty. It doesn't contain anything. And the I am is love. That also doesn't contain anything, but it's absolute love. It embraces everything. It forgives everything. This I am, this sense of being. And these two elements never change. They are always there. There is always this consciousness, this empty looking, and this sense of being, this sense of existence. And actually, when it's really seen, it begins to be seen that those two things are not separate from anything that's seen. Consciousness, or the empty perceiver, is in all things. In fact, there is no consciousness, there is no perception. There is only nothing appearing as everything. But if I just jump to that too quickly, then the mind begins to feel like it's failed, like it can't get it. And then it goes into a story of failure. I can't get this, it's too confusing. And what might be happening when I speak is there might be a love for what I'm saying and the excitement. And this is the I am coming forward again. It's the you construct dissolving to an extent. And as it dissolves, all that's left is everything. And then there's that love, because who you are, the I am, is love. What happens when the separate entity identifies is this energy goes into time. It makes it feel like this moment is always a result of the past. And that who you are now is something that arrives in time. So it always makes it feel like you are someone, and you're kind of looking at yourself, and you're always obsessed with yourself. And that self, that person that you take yourself to be, it kind of covers what is. It covers the I am, and it covers the consciousness. And it begins to feel, or your love begins to be lost, because your nature is loved. So it begins to, the separate entity that forms begins to feel like it's lost love. And it's not conscious of this, and then the great game of seeking begins. It begins, the person, to seek for that love in time. So the love is who you are. But when that person is focused on, it feels like you are contained, you're limited, and that love begins to be covered. So you seek, the separate person seeks in the only place it can, in objects, in time. And it begins to use the thinking process to look for its love. But the thinking process is about survival, about fixing problems. So the mind, the person, begins to get obsessed with fixing problems and completing stuff in time. And he begins to feel disappointed, because no matter how hard it tries, it can never arrive. It can have great moments of highs, it can have great moments where it feels like it's found it, but then it loses it again. And so it gives the feeling over time like that you can't arrive at the place you're trying to arrive at. So your seeking can get even more intense. Or maybe then you begin to listen to non-duality. And the seeking projects onto every object it can. Is this my love? Is this my love? Is this my love? And it gets more and more heartbroken, because no thing can be your love. Your love is your essence. Your love is who you are. It's that those objects in time have reminded you of who you are. When you've been with those objects that you love, you forgot about yourself, you forgot about the timeline, you forgot about where you should be or want to be, and you dissolved into what's happening. They open your heart back to that I am, but then the mind thinks it's the object, but it's never the object. And that's beautiful, to have items in which you really love, items that give you more pleasure than others. I'm not suggesting that you become some blank canvas that doesn't love, but you will not find completion there. Completion is your nature. Well, you will find there is great pleasure, but pleasure comes and goes. Always. You can never hold on to something, and that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of all this creation, is that it never stays the same. It's always changing. But everything it changes into is itself. We believe in our mentality that we're moving through a separate world, and we're moving through a world that exists when we're not there. So we have this kind of mental image, but it's all mental images, that we're moving through this separate world and that we're going to different places in this world. But actually, there is only ever this moment, and the energy is changing in this stillness. So there's only ever stillness happening. So you're always in the same place, but in that the forms are changed, just like a kaleidoscope. And the mentality, the way the mind thinks, because it thinks in subject-object, it thinks, I went somewhere. But you've never been anywhere. You've never been anywhere. You've always been here. You cannot get away from yourself. It's always stillness experiencing itself as movement, no matter what forms take place. And science supports this. I don't really understand it in great detail, but this is what quantum physics says. That when we don't look at it, the world doesn't exist. But this is so much for our mind to comprehend, because our mind is set up in subject-object. In me moving through a world, rather than this stillness where things are coming and going. This is stillness. As you begin to see that who you are isn't a moving person, that you're not someone found in time, you're not your thoughts, you're not your ideas, you're not anything that manifests, you see that who is looking never moved. Who's actually experiencing never, ever, ever moved. You're always home. This is love. And this really isn't so much to do with the person. But all spiritualities get mixed together, and I love spirituality. Like, let's improve the human form. It's so beautiful, because the more we improve these human forms, the more it gets passed on generation after generation, because it's simply information moving on. But the changing of the human form isn't the same as non-duality. I mean, if you think about Nisargadatta Maharaj, who is apparently in my line of teachers. I don't really buy into all that stuff, but came from Ramesh and Roger, so he's Ramesh's teacher. So if you go to Nisargadatta Maharaj, I assure you, he never worked on his psychology. I'm really sure that he didn't work on his psychology or becoming a nicer person. Like, if you watch videos of him, there's not that very videos. But he totally wasn't into that. I'm sure he wasn't understanding why he spoke to someone like this way or why he got angry, which apparently he got angry a lot. But yet there was still that deep realization there, that deep freedom. And he obsessively smoked cigarettes. But the person always has to imagine something it can do or be, otherwise it can't imagine anything. But it's not the person that wakes up. The person improves. Like in my story, in the Lisa story, when this realization happened, a lot of my conditioning softened. But I can still be an asshole. I can still also be very lovely. I can still be greedy. But your mind is so conditioned to think it's a person that gets enlightened. How can she be like that? It must change the person. But it's just you're mixing up the two things. This kind of changing and improving and growing and reconditioning the person isn't to do with non-duality. Often there has to be that first, because the person is so obsessed with itself and so trapped in its traumas and conditioning that it has to relax that to an extent, because otherwise there's just such an obsessive thinking about the pain and trying to get away from the pain. But it's not that person that wakes up, because who are you? Who are you? Who hears me speaking? Who looks at me now? That conditioning is looked at just like I'm looked at, just like the world is looked at. That conditioning of the person isn't an experiencer. It is an experience. And this is talking about a movement back to who you are, this stillness looking out. It's beautiful. I'll give you a heads up. If you want to believe that it's about the person becoming a particular way, you will be on this path forever. Because the person can always improve. Always. Endlessly evolve. Like, use your imagination. Your mind could always grow. Everything about you could evolve constantly. That's what this world is. Constant involvement. Growing and growing and growing and growing. And growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. Oh my goodness. It's amazing, this subject. I love non-duality. I love it. So I get so many people writing to me with psychological issues, and I'm so happy to help you with psychological issues. Like, I'm happy to have a go at it, but that's never going to end. That's never going to end. Your obsession with yourself is never going to end until it's seen that that's not who you are. And when I say psychological issues, I mean sort of this happening in your life or that happening in your life and experiencing pain then and here. That's what I mean by psychological issues. And this person did that to me. And I'm happy to go for it and have a bash at it and show you the seeking that goes on to get rid of that. But what's got to be realized is that that is not who you are. You are beyond that. And you can stay dancing in that world forever. Just like you could stay dancing in trying to achieve money forever. Although really our concepts are so limited, and the idea of forever and what that means is redundant. Redundant. Okay, we take some questions now. And notice how a lot of the questions are based on someone experiencing, which is totally okay, and somebody's experience. But just notice the obsession that you have with your experience and looking for the perfect experience. You won't find freedom there. Freedom is that's what you're experiencing this. Who's experiencing this? Who? Who let the dogs out? It's so exciting, all of this. As soon as it begins to be seen that you aren't concept and that concepts aren't true, anything's possible. And you begin to remember the creative force of what you are, who you are, that you are the creator. You're not consciously creating, you're spontaneously creating, but that's who you are, that enormous creative energy. Okay.